I'm finally adding a third design to my Chinese zodiac yin-yang patterns. Hello and welcome back to Jenna Gets Creative. Yep, it's Zodiac Yin-Yang number 3, and today I'm illustrating the Year of the Ox. I've already done Year of the Rat and Year of the Tiger, and after today I've still got 9 left to go before this series is complete. If you're interested in hearing more detailed information about the Chinese zodiacs and the yin-yang design, I talked at length about that in my previous 2 videos, particularly the Year of the Rat entry. I also include a traditional to digital cleanup tutorial on the Year of the Tiger video if you're interested in how I get these ready to use on print-on-demand merch services like Redbubble. While you watch me create this design, I'll tell you a little bit about the ox in the Chinese zodiac system, and then I'm going to tell some stories about professors I've had in the past who had no idea what they were doing. Why that topic? Totally unrelated, I know, but I don't want to feel like I'm repeating myself from the previous yin-yang videos. A storytime video I was watching yesterday was about the animator's own terrible professor story. She asked for our stories in the comments, and I thought, you know what? My audience would probably get a chuckle out of these too. So first, let's talk about the Year of the Ox. If we follow the zodiac cycle in order, ox is the second animal after the rat. Yes, that means I did these videos slightly out of order, doing Year 3 Tiger as my second video, but I incorporated it into an Art at Excellence theme, and tigers fit better than oxen. The ox represents the early morning hours of 1 to 3 a.m., and it is yang. Ox are very valuable and honored creatures in Chinese culture due to their importance in agriculture and the fact that they are honest and hardworking creatures. People born in the Year of the Ox are thought to embody these traits, being honest and hardworking, but also humble, never seeking attention or praise. They're logical, slow to anger, and make great leaders. They are most compatible with snakes and roosters, and least compatible with horses, dogs, and goats. Their lucky colors are blue, green, and yellow. Their lucky numbers are 1 and 4. Their lucky plants are lily of the valley and bamboo. They are wise to avoid the colors red and brown and the numbers 3 and 6. They thrive in stable jobs with a strong family or leadership connection, such as teaching, law, medicine, and business. My mom was born in the Year of the Ox. Her favorite color is blue, and she's a teacher, so I guess at least some of that holds true. For those who are curious or perhaps confused by regional terms, an ox is a trained bovine used for draft work in agriculture. These are usually castrated males rather than bulls or cows, and they are usually worked in pairs. In some parts of the world, including Australia, they are called bullocks rather than oxen. Alright, let's move on to storytime. If you've been around long enough to hear my storytimes from 2018, then you'll already know this, but I've had multiple majors at the university level. I've studied engineering, history, and computer science as majors, and while I was studying history, my minor was psychology. On top of that, the school I was attending while I was studying history and psychology changed their rules partway through my time there, and I ended up taking a full course load of electives one semester just to meet some new arbitrary rules on lower year credit hours before I could get back to my upper year coursework. So if you're wondering why you're about to hear stories of professors from vastly different course areas, that's why. During that semester of electives, I took a forensics course offered through the anthropology department. It was super interesting. My professor was a professional in the field of forensics. She had stories for us from working on the Robert Pickton case and 9/11. We had group labs where we did forensics assessments on a set of real human skeletons that the department owned. I still own the textbook from that course over a decade later because it's so cool. But despite how interesting the class was and how passionate the professor was about the subject, she either hadn't been advised on testing and grading, or she didn't care. Pop quizzes would ask us for terminology only mentioned in the appendices at the back of the textbook and never covered in class. Worse, though, was when she graded our biggest test of the semester. We had to label a diagram of the human skeleton, and every blank was numbered. She marked based on an answer key she'd made up for herself that was simply numbered answers, not a correctly labeled copy of the same diagram or her own knowledge of the human skeleton. Well, her answer key had the radius and ulna reversed. When we all got the tests back, everyone who labeled those bones correctly lost marks, and everyone who incorrectly labeled them in reverse got full marks. There were enough of us wrongfully docked points that we complained. How would you have dealt with that if you were the professor? Class of just 30 students, 2 answers on your answer key were reversed. Collect them all back and recheck just those 2 questions, which would be just 60 words checked against an answer key. Let individual students come to you and get the marks they deserved or forever hold their peace. Go around the class asking students on the honor system what their marks should be. The answer is apparently none of the above. She gave the whole class 2 bonus marks in the gradebook to fix it. So now those of us who were correct had the mark we deserved in the first place, and those who had the answers reversed now had 4 points they didn't deserve. 4 points on that exam was enough to boost letter grades. We tried to explain why this wasn't an appropriate fix, but she didn't want to hear it and never did fix it. In my 4th semester of engineering, we had to do a course on rotating machines. It's a notoriously difficult course to begin with, and didn't seem like an appropriate time for the department to have us do the course, since the computer and electrical cohorts hadn't really split apart yet. Electrical, sure, motors, rotating machines is going to be needed eventually. Computer, not so much. Computer technology is moving toward entirely solid state these days. But anyway, there we were, wide-eyed 4th semester computer and electrical engineering students, fresh out of our first work placements, walking into the most difficult course of the year for our department. And the professor? Lecturer. He was a grad student who had never taught before. He believed that we should always learn something new every time he saw us, even if it was exam day. Midterm time rolls around and we're presented with 5 problems to solve that are worth 30% of our grade for the semester. You know those memes with teachers or professors laughing in the staff room saying, "And then I said the test will look exactly like the practice problems"? Yeah, this was much worse. It wasn't just the typical practice problems, but 100 times harder. This was concepts we hadn't covered yet, which required the correct interpretation and use of unlabeled formulae on the exam cover that we hadn't used before. At least one formula had a symbol I hadn't seen before. He asked us how we thought the midterm went as we were handing our papers in. This was my 7th or 8th year in post-secondary studies at that point, which I told him, and then I told him it was the most difficult test I'd ever written. He was shocked. He had no idea. Well, not only did the class as a whole do horribly, we also complained a lot. He decided to make the midterm worth 15% instead of 30% and give us a 15% weighted pop quiz. This was printed in folded booklet style with a heavier cardstock cover. There was a question worth about a third of the quiz on the back of the cardstock back cover. Half the class didn't see it. He also said we were allowed to make reference pages to bring to all of our tests, but we weren't allowed to label anything or include diagrams. I may have drew diagrams in pencil, wrote my formulas over the lines, and then erased the pencil. And then, of course, there's the art professor I've mentioned before. I took a semester of life drawing class, decided I really liked art classes as electives, and registered for an intro to painting course the next semester. I dropped that class during our 15-minute coffee break in the first lecture because the professor had an unreasonable expectation of what college students could afford to buy for her class, and she said anyone who thought watercolor qualified as real art should go across the street to the community center and take a class with the seniors instead. Yeah, no thanks. Bye, Felicia. Then there was the math department professor I was working for while studying computer science. He needed a programmer with a good handle on higher mathematics who could write code for computer testing of his grad students' work. I won't say the theorems they were working on because that would actually make it fairly easy to figure out who I'm talking about. Long story short and cryptic, his grad student was producing formula tables for different types of cases in his theorem, and he needed to be able to test every possible input variable to make sure the formula tables were correct and didn't break in unexpected ways. I wanted to write software that would allow him to type the formula table he was testing into the interface, give it an input, and say go. One program, infinite possible cases. He didn't want to work with a user interface. He wanted hard-coded programs for each individual formula table with hard-coded variable values that he could manually edit those values in the source code and then have a zillion different copies of the same code with a single number change. So instead of doing any high-level programming logic that would save us both a lot of time, I was literally just transcribing math formulas on paper into C code to be run in a Linux window. Oh, and the math department's network had a super messed up build of Linux that would corrupt any file with lines that were longer than the screen was wide. Meant in order to fit his formulas on screen in a way that wouldn't crash and die on his office computer, I had to abandon all the appropriate line indentation to make loops easy to read and debug. This was the worst code I've written since I started self-learning PHP in 2004, except it was 2015 and I wasn't an untaught teenager. He constantly pressured me to let him be my honors advisor so this could be my honors thesis project for my computer science degree. It was sweet, but I would have been laughed out of that meeting with my faculty chair. Not to mention, I could have written him software that would have suited every test case he cared to test in my first semester with him if he'd let me. But instead, I resigned from that position after 3 semesters because I couldn't take it anymore writing these awful, inefficient style guide disasters that were jerry-rigged to work on a corrupted Linux build. Anyway, I think I've rambled enough. Bless you if you listened all the way through that. The next Chinese zodiac animal, if I want to proceed in order after the tiger, is the rabbit. So let me know if you want to see the year of the rabbit designed next, or if there's another year's animal you're more excited to see. If you're looking for more to watch, I've got some suggestions up on the left-hand side of the screen now, or you can check out my writing and booky topics channel on the right. I upload art content twice a week at minimum, every Tuesday and Thursday, and if you like living life creatively, whatever that means to you, I'd love to have you along for the ride. Bye guys!